Her uneven steps echoed like a drumbeat of defiance across the dusty main street of Willow Creek, and the townsfolk's cruel laughter stung sharper than the desert wind. Clara Monroe, barely 20, limped through the heart of the small Nevada town, her right leg dragging slightly, a remnant of a childhood accident that had never fully healed. She clutched a basket of wildflowers she'd gathered to sell, her knuckles white from gripping the handle, her hazel eyes fixed forward to avoid the mocking stares. They called her Crooked Clara behind her back, sometimes to her face, their words slicing into her like a dull blade. But Clara kept walking, head high, because stopping would mean they'd WONIT was 1883, and Willow Creek was a town of rough edges and rougher hearts. Miners, shopkeepers, and saloon patrons alike saw Clara's limp as a flaw, a mark of weakness in a world that valued strength. She lived on the outskirts with her widowed mother, eking out a living by selling flowers and mending clothes. Every market day, she braved the jeers to set up her small stall, her mother's frail health leaving her no choice. The townsfolk bought her flowers, sometimes out of pity, but their whispers followed her like shadows. "She'll never marry," they'd say. "Who'd want a girl who can't even walk right?" Clara heard it all, and though she smiled through the pain, each word chipped away at her spirit. One sweltering afternoon, as Clara arranged her flowers under the shade of a tattered awning, a stranger rode into town. His name was Eli Tucker, a cowboy with weathered hands and eyes that carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. His horse, a chestnut mare named Juniper, snorted as he dismounted, dust swirling around his boots. Eli wasn't like the men of Willow Creek. He didn't strut or sneer, he moved with a quiet confidence, his broad shoulders relaxed but his gaze sharp. He'd come to town to resupply before heading to a cattle drive, but his eyes caught Clara's stall, and she felt his stare before she saw him, her cheeks flushing as she tucked a stray lock of auburn hair behind her ear. "Flowers, mister?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Eli tipped his hat, revealing a crooked smile. "Reckon I could use some color in my life," he said, picking up a bundle of lavender. But he wasn't looking at the flowers. He watched Clara move, her careful steps as she reached for another bundle, and something in his expression softened. To him, her movements weren't clumsy, they were deliberate, graceful, like a dancer finding her rhythm in a world that refused to keep time. The townsfolk noticed Eli's attention, and their mockery grew louder. "Careful, cowboy," a miner called from the saloon steps, "she'll trip you up with that limp." Laughter erupted, and Clara's face burned. She braced for Eli to join in, to laugh or walk away. Instead, he turned to the miner, his voice low but firm. "Seems to me she's got more grace in one step than you've got in your whole soul." The crowd fell silent, stunned by the stranger's defense. Clara's eyes met Eli's, and for the first time in years, she felt seen, not as Crooked Clara, but as herself. Over the next few days, Eli lingered in Willow Creek longer than he'd planned. He bought flowers he didn't need, asked Clara about her favorite blooms, and listened as she spoke of her mother's illness and their struggling homestead. He shared stories of cattle trails and starry nights, his words painting a world Clara had only dreamed of. But the town's cruelty didn't stop. They mocked Eli now, too, calling him a fool for wasting time on a broken girl. Clara overheard and, one evening, confronted him by the livery stable. "Why do you stay?" she asked, voice trembling. "They're right, I'm not whole." "You don't need to pity me." Eli's jaw tightened. "Pity," he said. "Clara, I don't see a limp when I look at you. I see a woman who walks through fire every day and keeps going. That's strength, not brokenness." His words cracked something open in her, a hope she'd buried long ago. But hope was dangerous, and Clara's fears were a heavy chain. She worried Eli's kindness was fleeting, that he'd leave for the cattle drive and forget her. Worse, she feared her mother's worsening health would trap her in Willow Creek forever, limping under the weight of the town's judgment. The first major challenge came when Clara's mother, Ellen, took a turn for the worse. A fever gripped her, and the town's only doctor was away. Clara spent sleepless nights at her mother's bedside, her flower stall neglected, her savings dwindling for medicine she couldn't afford. Eli stepped in without hesitation. He rode to a neighboring town to fetch a healer, bartering his own supplies to cover the cost. When he returned, he helped Clara tend to Ellen, his steady presence a balm to her fraying nerves. The townsfolk whispered about the cowboy's charity, some calling it reckless, others mocking his devotion to a cripple. But Eli didn't waver, and Ellen slowly recovered, her frail hands squeezing Clara's with gratitude. The second challenge was Clara's own heart. She'd grown to care for Eli, his quiet strength and unwavering kindness stirring feelings she'd never dared name. But doubt gnawed at her. Could a man like him, free as the open range, truly want a life with her? One night, under a sky ablaze with stars, she voiced her fears. "You could have anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me?" Eli took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle. "Because you're you, Clara. Your heart, your fight, it's more beautiful than any step you take. I ain't looking for perfect. I'm looking for real." His words broke through her defenses, and for the first time, she let herself believe she was enough. The final challenge came from the town itself. A group of miners, emboldened by liquor and spite, confronted Clara at her stall, knocking over her flowers and taunting her limp. "You think that Cowboy's gonna save you?" one sneered. "You're still just crooked, Clara." Before she could respond, Eli appeared, his presence like a storm rolling in. He didn't raise a fist, but his voice carried a warning that silenced the crowd. "You mock her, you mock me," he said. "And I don't take kindly to that." The miners backed off, cowed by his resolve. Later, Clara, shaken but defiant, decided she was done hiding. With Eli's encouragement, she began teaching herself to dance, her uneven steps becoming a quiet rebellion against the town's cruelty. As weeks turned to months, Clara and Eli's bond deepened. He stayed in Willow Creek, taking odd jobs to help her and Ellen. The townsfolk's mockery faded, replaced by grudging respect as they saw Clara's stall thrive and her mother regain strength. Clara, too, changed. She walked taller, her limp no longer a source of shame but a testament to her resilience. When Eli proposed under the same starry sky where they'd bared their hearts, she said yes, not because he'd saved her, but because they'd saved each other. The story of Clara and Eli spread beyond Willow Creek, a tale of grace found in unlikely places. They faced the world together, her steady steps beside his, proving that love sees not flaws but the courage to keep moving. For every soul who'd ever felt less than whole, their story whispered a truth: you are enough, just as you are.